これも黙示録の予言と関わりが。
If an anime character keeps their eyes closed most of the time, know that it isn't because they can't see, it's because they're too damn cool to do that kind of stuff. And Serpico definitely falls in this category of eyes closed all the time anime characters. Is there anything this man can't do? He can cook, clean, recognize the allegiances of a given army by simply glancing at their banners, and he can fight much better than he lets on to others. He's also not the goofball he makes himself out to be, but that's the thing. He himself is okay with that. Serpico is a character with multiple layers of emotion and tragedy in his background, which are only exacerbated by the woman he has dedicated his service to, because not only is Farnese his master, she is also his half-sister, something she is still unaware of. Underneath those closed eyelids are the dilated pupils of a man so gripped by his own fears and preconceptions that he refuses to let anything change it for him, and that is the guy we're here to talk about today. So strap on in, because this will be one painful ride. This is Serpico's origins explored. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. He's introduced as a goofy perv, yet he's anything but that. Serpico's introduction to Berserk. The way a character is introduced says a lot about their core personalities. For instance, the first time we see Guts, he's knee-deep in Apostle Guts and gets out of it using his cannon arm, which perfectly encapsulates his solo Black Swordsman era. The first time we see Griffith, he's calmly observing Guts cut down Bazuso and admiring his handiwork, while showing no remorse for his own losses. This would become something of a recurring theme in his story, but in the most twisted ways humanly possible. By those standards, Serpico's introduction was probably the biggest red herring in all of Berserk because he was insufferable in the beginning. Serpi is first seen in chapter 95, which takes place a full 20 episodes after the eclipse. A mother pilgrim and her child are walking through the border region of Midland when they are crossed by the Holy Iron Chain Knights, a military order directly under the Holy See. The mother is confused as to why the papacy's central unit of knights was sent out in such force to Wyndham, unaware that she's being evaluated as a potential mate for one of them. And the man doing the evaluation? Why, that would be Serpico himself. He points the mother out to his vice commander Azan, teasing him for being single at his age, and saying that a potential war widow would be a good choice for a wife. Azan berates him for sullying their holy task as miracle inquisitors with his lustful talk of women, and is about to tell Serpico what's fashionable for his face as the latter continues mocking him when their commander shuts them both up. The Holy Iron Chain Knights were deployed by the Miracle Recognition Department of the Holy See to check whether the dread prophecy of the Falcon was true or not, and to their horror, all the signs were pointed towards true. A red lake had appeared to the west of Wyndham after the sun died during the 5th eclipse, which means that the Falcon of Darkness would also soon appear. Commander Farnese was right in believing that the prophecy was true. Where everyone made a mistake was assuming that it was about the Black Swordsman. See, during Guts' 2-year revenge quest, he'd slaughtered dozens, if not hundreds of apostles and monstrous creatures. But we know from the Black Swordsman arc that once an apostle dies, their soul is dragged into the abyss as their body reverts to its original human state and remains in the physical world. Over the course of those 2 years, the Holy See had received numerous reports of demonic activity across various Holy See territories, with 2 common threads linking them all: a mound of corpses left behind at every scene, and the appearance of a Black Swordsman. The Miracle Recognition Department simply put 2 and 2 together and dispatched the Holy Iron Chain Knights to bring this Falcon of Darkness to the altar of justice. For 2 years, Serpico followed Farnese around every region where the Holy See religion is practiced, tracking the Black Swordsman with his closed eyes and goofy grin. Their search finally bore fruit when they came across Jill's village in their search, where Serpico witnessed the mass burial to several dead children alongside Farnese. He accompanied her into the local chapel with the priest conducting the burial mass and learned of the supposed truth behind the children's death. He saw Farnese's negotiation with the former soldier Zepik firsthand and retained his usual chastising and aloof demeanor as they accompanied him to the Misty Valley. Serpico was more concerned about Zepik falling off his horse in the valley's awkward footing than locating the prophetic antichrist of his claimed faith, but all that changes when they reach the mouth of the Misty Valley and find the corpses of the pseudo-apostles Guts had slain. The Holy Iron Chain Knights are thoroughly disturbed to find such a grisly scene once again, but their Vice Commander Azan declared that this could only be the work of the Black Swordsman, but there was more. According to him, the injuries of the slain could only have been inflicted by a cannon because limbs were strewn about the place like toys in a child's playroom. And this is where Serpico opened his eyes for the first time and proved to us that he was more than the trolling jerk he let everyone else believe he was. He immediately disproves Azan's theory by pointing out that every corpse had markings that clearly revealed they'd been cut down, not blown up. Additionally, he also points out that this was the work of a single man wielding an enormous weapon because the idea of the Black Swordsman traveling with so many men and not slipping up once just did not add up with his reputation. This quick 2-minute deduction is where Serpico gives us a glimpse of his true intelligence for the first time. He might like goofing off with his superiors and talking about anything but the sacred duty they were supposed to be performing, but that didn't mean he was a slacker. Azan, who is the vice commander of the Holy Iron Chain Knights, used to be a legendary warrior in his youth. In fact, he was kind of like Guts, because he once managed to hold a bridge against 100 enemies all by himself. The Black Swordsman even knew him by reputation, but such a seasoned warrior made the rookie mistake of thinking edged weapon wounds were made by cannon fire. In contrast, Serpico, who is a Herald of Arms by title and a manservant for Farnese by profession, was able to deduce the attack style and strength of Guts by simply watching his handiwork. Indeed, he does possess snake-like instincts in that he rarely bares his venomous fangs when around people, but when he does, you can be sure he's looking to score a lethal hit. The dissonance in Serpico's external and internal behaviors is what makes him such an intriguing character, and the events that follow after the Holy Iron Chain Knights pick up Guts' trail only add to that aura of mystique. He's a fanatic, but not for his religion, and he only fights to protect his object of worship, Serpico's dynamic with Farnese and Guts. As Farnese's forces begin combing the bushes of the Misty Valley in their mission to find Guts, Serpico is the only voice of reason. He pleads with his commander to give up her wild goose chase, as finding anyone in the thick fog of the Misty Valley was pointless, unless they had an elf with them, like Jill. Moreover, the fire started by the Black Swordsman's battle with the Apostle Rosine was spreading across the entire valley like wildfire, and threatened to engulf them as well. Serpico pleads with Farnese to stop the chase, but she is determined to contemplate her holy mission. Having come this far, she won't give up now. He resigns himself to what he thinks is a pointless hunt, even after the proverbial mist which gave the valley its name clears out, so he is mildly surprised at actually finding Guts after all their trouble. Serpico watches the rank and file of the Holy Iron Chain Knights try to capture the Black Swordsman and fail in epic fashion with concealed amusement. It doesn't remain concealed for too long because Azan starts getting frustrated at the miserable performance of his troops, and Serpi says that it was only natural they would. The Holy Iron Chain Knights were also known as the Pretty Boy Knights because they were comprised entirely of nobility not fit for the front lines. When Azan asks him if that was the case, then why did he join up? To which Serpico replies that it was an obvious choice for someone who hates the sight of blood. We all know that this was actually because of Farnese, but his given reason here isn't too far from the truth. Serpico also says that the collection of aristocratic bonbons attacking Guts faltering in the face of his prowess made total sense, which Azan surprisingly agreed with. He requested Farnese to allow him to engage the Black Swordsman directly, and Serpico was once again mildly amused to see the old-fashioned knight keep Guts at bay with his experienced fighting style. But Serpico was also the only one to notice that Guts was too injured to continue fighting, and so he might switch tactics instead. This keen observation is what allowed him to save Farnese's life, because if he hadn't clandestinely hurled a branch at Guts' crossbow wounds, his commander would have been kidnapped by now. Yet in hindsight, maybe he should have leapt into action and finished Guts off himself, because his lady mistress would never be the same again. The Black Swordsman taunts Farnese during his interrogation, and is whipped bloody for his insolence, but Serpico immediately notices that Guts had been egging her on. He requests him to not antagonize Farnese like that again, claiming that she could actually be quite charming when she wanted to be, but he knew that something was wrong with her anyway, and he had a feeling that something bad was about to happen soon, which was proven correct when Guts broke out of his cage and took Farnese hostage. The Black Swordsman caused chaos in the encampment of the Holy Iron Chain Knights by setting their horses loose and scaring them with fire. In the rabble that rose up, only Serpico was calm enough to mount a horse and give chase to the Black Swordsman, or should we call it rage, because his expression during the chase was one of pure malice. Serpico mounted a bolt on his crossbow and aimed it squarely at Guts' back as he closed in on the Black Swordsman, but he was stopped dead in in his tracks by the spirits chasing after his prey as well. The malign spirits of the dead spook his horse into rearing, and Serpico is knocked off its back with a sickening thud. He recovers relatively unharmed, but wonders what just happened, and if what he saw was real or not. Serpi wanders on the escaped duo's trail until the sun comes up, and only finds them because he hears Farnese scream at the top of her lungs. He immediately covers his commander with his cloak, as if he's used to handling her this way, and notes that Guts has made her cry once again. When Farnese commands him to kill the swordsman for the sake of her honor, he flatly refuses, pointing out their obvious power difference, and is slapped in the face for it. Serpico somewhat surprisingly asks Guts' leave, seeing as there was no point in aggravating the situation any farther, but before departing, he leaves him with a warning shot. Like a snake poised to ambush its prey, he draws his rapier and hits Guts in the face with a leaping strike, drawing blood in the blink of an eye. But the Black Swordsman's counter took the sole off his shoe mid-air, which made Serpico realize he truly can't win against Guts in a fair fight. He leaves with his commander in tow and resurfaces next in chapter 131, as the Holy Iron Chain Knights protect the Inquisitor Father Mosgus. Turns out that after failing to capture and produce the Black Swordsman to justice, the Miracle Recognition Department had relieved Farnese of her 2-year-long mission only to stick her with a man as sadistic as she was. Externally, Serpico maintains his cheerful disposition and wonders out loud whether a carefree Inquisition was warranted at a time when the Kushan Empire was invading Midland territory. But internally, he's worried about something else entirely. And that thing would be the Inquisitor himself, because Father Mosgus was a man he did not want to meet or interact with even in the absence of his own sadistic commander. If you want to know more about why Serpico was borderline scared of a holy official, go check out our Origins video on Mosgus, but suffice it to say that the man was a violent fanatic of the Holy See religion, so it makes sense that Serpi would be apprehensive of him given his own experiences with Farnese. He thinks to himself that it was perhaps being given this lesser job that was putting his lady mistress off, but her obvious discomfort made him realize that it was the Black Swordsman's mistake. Ever since the night Farnese was abducted by Guts, she had not been herself, and to Serpico that was unforgivable. He was planning on getting his revenge if he ever came across him once again, and as fate would have it, he did. Serpico's journey to the Tower of Conviction was spent admiring Mosgus' style and observing the effect he had on Farnese, but once they got there, things changed rather quickly. Serpico was a first-hand witness to the madness of Mosgus' gospel. He saw the Inquisitor's torture chamber and the flush it brought to Farnese's face. He saw Mosgus perform a savage form of prostration and heard his holy teachings with his own ears. Heck, he even split a bowl of soup on the table of some unappreciative Holy Iron Chain Knights for bad-mouthing their commander, though he acted as though it was because of his clumsiness. Serpico very clearly cares for Farnese deeply, and her distress has become his, so he decides to nip it at the bud and take out the Black Swordsman. When the Holy Iron Chain Knights manage to locate the heretic hideout they'd been sent to clear out, Serpico doesn't waste time fighting monsters or heretics himself. Instead, he waits for Guts at the escape route Isidro showed him, intending to make him disappear. The Herald of Arms informs Guts that he had been waiting for him, but when the Black Swordsman immediately opens fire on him, he is forced to show his true skill. Serpico evades crossbow bolts and explosives aimed directly at him, and corners Guts with his rapier, revealing that he had chosen this spot after careful consideration. The escape route was a narrow track leading out of the mountain in which the cave resided, and every aspect of the environment was working to Guts' disadvantage. He couldn't even dodge attacks here without being mindful of where he was going, let alone fight someone with Dragon Slayer, and Serpico took full advantage of that fact. In his mind, Guts was the source of Farnese's current distressed state, so he wanted to eliminate him and return things to a state of normalcy. He had honestly picked the perfect spot for that purpose, and his fighting style and provocative trash talk did put Guts on the rope for a moment, but he recovered by straight up catching Serpico's sword and smashing it with his metal arm. Guts then prepared to poke him full of holes with his mounted crossbow, but Serpi managed to not only dodge it, he also pickpocketed an explosive from Guts and used it as a diversion to get away. After escaping the Black Swordsman's murderous grasp, Serpico thinks to himself that he should just stick to his regular attitude because being serious was really getting him in trouble. But he doesn't know that he can ever go back to being that way. The Herald of Arms had now entered the holy ground upon which a miracle of darkness was about to occur, and his life from this point forward was going to see more seriousness from him than it ever had before. In his mission to protect his object of worship, Lady Farnese, Serpico singles Guts out to be his ultimate enemy, and we find out the reason for his fanatical devotion to his mistress after the incarnation ceremony is over and Femto has been manifested in a body of flesh as Griffith. A secret relationship and a sacred bond that is precious enough to protect. Serpico's true origins revealed. During the events of the incarnation ceremony, Serpico is one of the only people actively thinking about Farnese's safety. Apparently, the Herald at Arms decided that if he couldn't keep trouble away from his mistress, he'd just get her out of trouble's grasp because Farnese was once again being released from her duty. Only this time the request came specifically for her, and at the recommendation of her father, Frederico Van Diemen. After leaving the abbot's chambers and getting well out of earshot of everyone else, she slaps her manservant whilst accusing him of spying on her for her father. Serpico denies it at first, but then agrees with her when she says that her father probably did it to ensure she wasn't burning heretics like she used to. Although it is true that her heretic burning had increased in recent times, it's never made clear whether Serpico actually did rat her out or not, but the implication is what's important for us because it's related to his origins. So let us wrap up the events of the incarnation ceremony quickly and get to that post-haste. Serpico is the only person in the entire Tower of Conviction to notice that Guts had yet again kidnapped his mistress, and he goes after them once more. But this time, Serpico is forced to work with the Black Swordsman as the bloody blobs of malice engulfing St. Albion threaten to kill them all, and only Guts had survived such a thing before. He doesn't exactly mind this because in a life or death situation, he'd rather have the Black Swordsman on his side, and together they managed to survive not just that sacrificial ceremony, but also a Kushan attack. Serpico personally cut down multiple Kushan scouts advancing on Farnese before being whisked away to safety by Azan, whom he was genuinely shocked to have seen survived. Serpico assumed that after witnessing literal angels and demons, that they would be returning to the Miracle Recognition Department and filling out an urgent report, so you can understand his shock when he heard that Farnese was renouncing her religion and post, just to follow the Black Swordsman. Though he went along silently enough, and even thanked Luca for some free food for the journey, Serpico was deeply unsettled by this sudden change of heart in his mistress. The reason for that would become clear when we finally got his backstory. As the secularized duo stopped in the ruins of a house in their journey towards the Black Swordsman, the snowy night reminded the former Herald of Arms of his tragic childhood. Serpico grew up in a holy city as a single child looking after a deathly emaciated mother who was bullied into oblivion daily. He loved his mother as a child does, but was abhorred for her in the same breath for her stubborn dedication to the concept of pride. She had been a maid for a noble family a long time ago, and ended up having an affair with the head of the family. When it was discovered that she was carrying a child in her belly, Serpico's mother was summarily abandoned, and she raised him in one of the poorest hovels of that holy city, but she never forgot her beloved. His mother would always drill into him that he had to carry himself with pride, for he was the son of an aristocrat. But every day the city's bullies would rob him of that same pride and leave him stuck in an unfeeling state of limbo. One day, after getting beaten up too badly on a particularly snowy night, he was found by Farnese, who took him in and claimed him as her personal page. She nursed him back to health like he was a wounded puppy, and ordered him around like one as well, but this was fine with Serpico. He was ashamed to admit this to himself in later years, but at the time, Farnese had given him the one thing he'd always desired, a way out of his solitary prison. Serpico loved his mother, as any child does, but the fact that he had been thanklessly looking after her since he was an infant had gotten to him. When Farnese's family offered him the job, he took it at once because it meant he would no longer have to face the despair that waited for him back home. And to his great guilt, this was what put a smile on his mother's face. When she learned that Serpico had gotten a job at a nobleman's house, she was proud of her son and told him to make her proud through his actions. What she didn't know was to him it was good riddance. Serpico dedicated himself to being Farnese's ragdoll because at least that way they could both be alone together. After joining the Van Diemen household, he noticed just how alone his mistress was in a mansion filled with people, because while everyone catered to her whims, no one really gave her the attention she truly wanted. Her parents could only show their affection for her through material things, and more often than not were not home because of their own engagements. In a palace filled with all sorts of treasures and servants and oddities of the world, the Lady Farnese might as well have led an isolated life, and Serpico truly identified with this fact. This is why he was not afraid of her private crematorium, or the fact that she seemed to lose her mind whenever things didn't go her way. He understood that that was her way of expressing herself. What he didn't know was that Farnese was also his half-sister, because as fate would have it, Frederico di Van Diemen III was the man his mother had had an affair with, which made Serpico Farnese's bastard brother. This fact was revealed by Lord Lord Van Diemen himself, who noticed Serpico in the mansion a year after his hiring and realized who the boy truly was. In exchange for an offer of peerage and enough financial support for the rest of his life, Federico convinced Serpico to keep his identity secret from everyone he knew, including his mistress. He also charged him with overseeing Farnese in all things she did, because he trusted the reports he'd heard of her effect on his wanton daughter. But this only made Serpico realize just how similar he was to his sister. He had never known his father, and you could say that part of his formative years was a journey to discover his identity. She had grown up with him her whole life, and yet it was as though he knew her as well as he knew Serpico. In their depressingly lonely existences, Serpi and Farnese only had each other to turn to for warmth, but their idea of it was rather different. See, despite not liking many of the things that his masters asked him to do, Serpico wasn't the type to betray his duty or go back on his word, unless there was a great reason to do it. He never tells Farnese the truth of his identity, and is so good at hiding it that she doesn't know he's her half-brother till this day. And perhaps that's why she falls for him in their teenage years. Well, maybe that's a bit too definitive of a label for what happens, but you guys tell us what you think. When Farnese and Serpico were coming of age, the head daughter of the Van Diemen family chose not to give her favor to anyone but her escort, and if any nobleman tries to berate Serpico, she challenges him to a duel, and has Serpi fight it instead. She notices that he holds back every time, and she whips him about like a play toy for not applying himself fully. But Serpico feigns ignorance and lets her do this to him. Suddenly, Farnese stops mid-whip and starts biting at his biceps, making him realize that she had started to think of him as more than a page. His theory is proven correct when, after being told she was going to be married off to some other noble family, Farnese begs with Serpico to run away with her. She thinks that they can do it because they are one and the same, and Serpi nearly gives in as well before recalling who she was and stopping himself. Serpico is the one person who could have saved Farnese from herself when she started burning the Van Diemen mansion down, and ever since that day, his father tasked him with keeping his daughter in line as well. Farnese was made to go to a monastery, where she outperformed everyone else to become the leader of the Holy Iron Chain Knights, and this is where one of the most tragic moments of Serpico's life occurred. After joining the Van Diemen estate, Serpico's mother's mental state declined to the point she couldn't even recognize him. She started thinking he was his father, and he had to shift her to a sanatorium because there was nothing else he could do. And then, one day, Farnese's zealous pursuit of heretics culminated in her raiding his mother's sanatorium and binding her to the stake for burning. Serpico was shocked by this, and let slip the fact that the woman he was walking towards was his mother in the presence of Holy See officials, who began doubting his own fate. As he reached his mother, she called out to her husband and hoped that their son was serving him well. Before he could even react, Farnese thrust a torch in his hands and forced him to prove his loyalty to her by committing his own mother to their faith. Serpico wondered what it was that he and his half-sister got deliverance from that night, as they gave his mother the fate of a heretic together. But he's been with Farnese ever since, because she's the only one who acknowledges his existence as being truly crucial to her survival. Serpico doesn't hold any ill will towards his mistress for making him do something so heinous, but he does develop a lifelong hatred for fire. This came up during the Holy Iron Chain Knights Inquisition in St. Albion, when he protected an accused heretic's son from suffering the same fate as his parent, and was seen doing so by Jerome. He later asked Serpico why he did what he did, and the Herald revealed that it was because of something that happened 3 years ago. This was the instance he was talking about. The reason why Serpico hates fire and religious zealotry is the fact that religion took his dementia-suffering mother away from him, and his personal guilt just compounds that fact. So he has dedicated his life to protecting his half-sister by doing what he thinks is best for her, and this includes killing Guts if he has to. Serpico and Farnese eventually join up with Guts and become key members of his traveling party, but the Herald makes it clear to the Black Swordsman that it is for his mistress's sake that he is doing this. Personally, he would prefer that Guts just died so Farnese would no longer struggle emotionally, but he knew he could have no say in the matter, so he just bides his time for the opportune moment to present itself, because he knows that sooner or later, Farnese will be caught up in the Black Swordsman's maelstrom of malice, and he cannot let his sister die that easily. A friendship that shall soon be tested. Why Serpico is important to Berserk's story going forward. Ever since joining up with Guts after the incarnation ceremony, Serpico has learned a lot about the world of magic. He's become friends with a witch and 2 elves, has a cool sword and cloak powered by wind elementals who trust him, and even his mistress has started learning how to use magic. He has fought beside Guts on numerous occasions, such as in Clipoff, and then again at the beach on their way to Vertanis, when he takes out Kushan sorcerers controlling the Pishacha attacking their party. But it was also during that fight that he realized Guts was more of a threat to Farnese than he previously realized. After putting on the Berserker armor, Guts lost all sense of who was his friend and who was his enemy, charging everyone indiscriminately without Shirke controlling him. This fact terrifies Serpico, who thinks that Guts is both Farnese's salvation and her ultimate demise, so he doesn't protest when she wants to return home in order to help Guts & Co. reach Skellig. Serpico goes so far as to challenge Guts to a final duel, where he goes all out against the Black Swordsman and uses his terrain to maximum effect, but his skills falter in the face of Guts' superior fighting ability, and Serpico is definitively humble. He accepts that Guts is more of a leave-it-to-chance kind of guy who will decide what he wants from Farnese as a person when he sees her, and joins his party once again but as a full-fledged ally. In the Black Swordsman party, Serpico is the best cook and second best fighter, and he has managed to form a genuine bond with everyone in it, including the sylphs that power his cloak and leaf blade. He fights alongside Guts all the way to Elfhelm, and has come to truly view him as a comrade close enough to speak his mind openly with. When Casca was being treated within the Corridor of Dreams, Serpico and Roderick managed to grab Guts for a quiet drink, where the three men appreciated each other's shared company. Guts thanked everyone in the party for helping him with Casca, when Serpico uncharacteristically did the same for him. He recapped his life as a holy Iron Chain Knight with Farnese, calling it peaceful but ultimately an existence devoted to his mistress's serenity. But when they met the Black Swordsman, his fierce lifestyle shattered Farnese's faith and made her obsessed with him. Serpico candidly admitted that he had thought about killing Guts multiple times, but his hand has now swayed from that purpose because he managed to do something the former Herald never could. He breathed life into Lady Farnese. Serpico was honestly bewildered by his own emotions towards this shift, but he gradually realized he was the same as his mistress. He acknowledged Casca as the reason Farnese learned how to grow up and express herself so quickly, and for that he was terribly thankful to Guts. And he was also thankful for the fact that he didn't have to adhere to his live and let live doctrine with Guts' party, because for the first time, Serpico truly felt free. This is why it should bother all of us that he survived the destruction of Elfhelm, because now that Farnese and the rest of them are on Griffith's radar, his gratitude could easily revert to hatred. If Berserk has made one thing clear, it's the fact that Serpico is extremely attached to his mistress. He's put his own life on the line multiple times for her sake without even thinking, and we'd like to think that he wants her to find out he's her brother so she can finally have family to rely on, but he knows how dicey that will be given their past. As of chapter 371, Roderick's seahorse is being pulled into a vortex in the ocean with the fate of its passengers extremely uncertain. Serpico is on board and as worried about Guts as anyone else, but we think that if Farnese ends up dying so the Black Swordsman can live, then Serpi is going to be his biggest problem, not Griffith or Zod. The crafty fox-like swordsman has already shown his tactical genius by pinning down Guts on multiple occasions, though he did have the element of surprise on his side. He knows the Black Swordsman arguably more intimately than anyone else, and has already expressed deep fear of what could happen if he goes berserk with no one to hold him back. This pretty much guarantees that Guts is going to end up losing control in front of his friends once more before the story is over, and the consequences for the same are going to be dire for all parties involved. Serpico could end up martyring himself for his family member without even getting a chance to reveal that truth to her, and that is going to undoubtedly be one of the most tragic moments in all of Berserk. Best Boy Serpi deserves a happy ending more than most people that populate that universe, which guarantees he's going to face a fate as bad as an Apostle's, if not worse. And to be honest with you guys, we're along for the ride out of sheer morbid curiosity. Marvelous verdict. And that's it for this video. Serpico might have been created by Kentaro Miura as a character that would make every female reader's heart swoon, but he has grown into an important emotional anchor for the story. His journey from being an abused commoner to the right hand of the daughter of the richest family in the Holy See is nothing short of being Shakespearean, and that's before he met Guts and the dark side of reality. Since then, he has come out of his self-assured and introverted shell and shown his confidence and kindness in spades. But given how deeply Serpico feels emotions, it's only a matter of time before he explodes in one way or another. And that is what we're now waiting to witness from his particular story. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. This has been Corey Whelan for Marvelous Videos. Have a good one, be safe out there, and thanks for watching.